Okay, Seven Fellas, so this is going to be a follow-up to my previous video. In my last video, I talked about the best movesets and partners for every restricted, and people in the comments were saying you should make a video on the counters to each restricted. So that's what I'm gonna do. In this video, I'm gonna get every restricted and tell you the best counters to it. If the best counter to them is a different restricted, I will name both the restricted and just a regular Pokemon. So, starting off with Mewtwo. The best partner for Mewtwo, not the best partner, the best counter to Mewtwo is going to be the best counters to Calyrex Shadow as well. Because Mewtwo is genuinely just a worse Calyrex Shadow. It's like slightly bulkier and that's it. And that's going to be Terapagos. Because Terapagos, once it terrestrializes, and even after just a few Calm Minds, it's not going to be doing much. Like, Mewtwo's not going to be doing much to it. Another good counter to Mewtwo is just your own Calyrex Shadow. But honestly, Mewtwo really won't be an issue. Because outside of restricteds, its best counter is probably Incineroar. And Mewtwo, both Mewtwo and Calyrex don't like Incineroar. Incineroar should probably be on your team anyway. I'm surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing gets like 90% usage. It's insane in this format. Yeah, that's just what. Just don't use Mewtwo. Just use Calyrex instead. It also doesn't like Fluttermane, because Fluttermane outspeeds it. Mewtwo just kind of sucks. Next is going to be Lugia, and for Lugia, you're going to be countered by the same stuff that counters Terapagos, because Lugia is basically just a worse Terapagos anyway. So Lugia, well, not particular, not really. Lugia also doesn't like Incineroar, but it does have that, like, it'll normally run like Aeroblast, Earth Power, Calm Mind, Protect. But again, just use Terapagos. Don't use Lugia. This Pokemon's ass. It doesn't like Incineroar. It really doesn't like Calyrex either. Or just any Pokemon with like a fast Encore. So like Iron Bundle. That's Iron Boulder. Although I guess it doesn't like Iron Boulder either. But Iron Bundle. It doesn't like Encore from Bundle. It doesn't like Encore, it doesn't like Snarl Spam, it doesn't like Taunt, it doesn't like a lot of things. Because Lugia's bad. Next is going to be Ho-Oh. Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky. Because Ho-Oh is good into quite a lot of restricteds. It's good into Zacian, it's good into Koraidon, it's good into Groudon. Unfortunately, it does hate a Pokemon it's often paired with Groudon. The best counter to Ho-Oh is going to be Raging Bolt. You resist both of Ho-Oh's stabs, you hit it back for super effective. If it clicks Terra Water, you still hit it for super effective. If it clicks Terra Dragon, you still hit it. You don't even need a restricted to take care of Ho-Oh. The restricted that's probably best into it is like Kyogre or something. But honestly, it shouldn't be an issue with just Raging Bolt. By the way, I forgot to mention, this video, it can also help as like some sort of a team building thing. So, say, since you know Ho-Oh's best counter is Raging Bolt, you could run something like Landorus for Raging Bolt. Landorus to help deal with it. What's next? Groudon. Now, there are quite a few ones. Groudon despises Calyrex Ice Rider. Kali Ice is probably Groudon's worst matchup. Which is why you want something like Umbreon to take care of Calyrex. Or Firepon, or Incineroar. But since you can't just slap another restricted on your team, I found Walking Wake is really good into it. But Umbreon isn't, not Umbreon, Walking Wake isn't exactly slappable. You can't just slap it on a team, call it a day. So the next best option is probably Urshifu Rapid Strike. Specifically paired with Rain Dance Tornadus, because Groudon will often run Terra Fire, which means that no matter, even if it Terras or not, chances are you're getting hit by Surging Strikes, and then with Rain Dance, it probably just drops. So next is Kyogre, yeah. So Kyogre. Kyogre is currently getting more usage than Groudon, so you're more likely to see this than Groudon. You know, just a standard Mystic Water, Water Spout, Origin Pulse, Ice Beam, Protect. There are two options for this. It hates Ogerpon Wellspring, because it can't really touch it, and it hates Raging Bolt, because it can't really touch it, and they both hit it for super effective. Which is why Kyogre, you might see it run Terra Grass, but even then, you're probably still doing more to it with Raging Bolt than it can do to you. Okay, next is going to be Rayquaza. Now, Rayquaza is actually seeing usage now, because I think it was Marcus Dion. Was it Marcus Dion? Hang on, I need to find out who this is. Hang on. Tola Webb. It's not Marcus Dion, it's Tola Webb. Yeah, Tola Webb. Tola Webb found a good team for Rayquaza. It's Rayquaza, Chempao, Amoonguss, Farigiraf, Urshifu, and Incineroar. And that team did well in the Honolulu tour. I'll make an analysis video on that soon. But it's likely that you're going to see this team popping up, because Rayquaza actually has a good team now. People are calling it mid, but it's hard to argue with, like, basically flying type close combat, extreme speed, and Swords Dance. Like, you can't really argue that. Like, that's a strong tool. That's a strong tool to have. Anyway, this thing hates the combination of Farigiraf and Fluttermane. That's really all you need. I'm gonna be honest. Or Farigiraf and, like, just any Pokemon that can hit Rayquaza really hard. That's all you need. Because then you can't extreme speed. Rayquaza is actually deceptively slow. So you can't E-speed, and then it just gets thwonked before you can like Dragon Ascent. So when you're building with Rayquaza, have something for that. Next is going to be Dialga. I'm gonna include both Dialga and Dialga Origin. What do these things hate? Quite a lot of things. Its worst matchup is probably Landorus. You know, Life Orb, Sheer Force stuff. Because then you force a Terra. Usually it'll run like Terra Fairy from what I've seen. But then you can just get hit by like Terra Poison Sludge Bomb. It doesn't like Terapagos that much either, because Terapagos can just Calm Mind. Yeah, just Calm Mind stuff. It doesn't like Zamazenta. It doesn't like Zamazenta because it can't hit Zamazenta super effectively without Earth Power. And then Zamazenta just flunks it with Body Press. So it's pretty simple. There's not much to say about Dialga. That's just what's good into it. Next going to be both forms of Palkia. Iron Bundle. Freeze Dry. Kill him now. You know, the 4 times Freeze Dry weakness is not very nice. Palkia also doesn't like Terapagos that much. It doesn't like Terapagos. It's also not the biggest fan of Zacian. I think Zacian's probably a better example here. Because Palkia can only hit it for neutral unless you're running like Flamethrower or Fire Blast, and then you force him to Terra because of Play Rough. So relatively simple. You're not going to be seeing Palkia that much anyway. But if your team just has like some reason a really bad matchup into Palkia, then there you go. Giratina. Boom. There you go. Calyrex, Incineroar. Both forms of Calyrex, actually. Giratina sucks. Don't use it. I didn't even need to go into detail on that one. Next is Reshiram. Again, you really don't like Landorus. You really don't like Landorus. Again, you just get flunked by Earth Power. Terra Fairy, you get hit by Sludge Bomb. Reshiram also doesn't really like Kyogre, because there's not much it can really do to Kyogre. Kyogre just hits it back with a Terra Water Spout. Raging Bolt isn't the best matchup for Reshiram, because then you're forced to click Draco Meteor. And even then, it might tank it, but also they could just Terra and then hit you back with it. It's this back and forth exchange that it isn't very favorable for Reshiram. Next is going to be Zekrom. Same as before, it hates Landorus. A lot of these Pokemon just hate Landorus. Zekrom also isn't the biggest fan of Incineroar, since it's a physical attacker. It also really doesn't like Calyrex Ice Rider, because it can hit Zekrom, but Zekrom can't hit it. So, yeah, that's you're not going to see Zekrom that often, so that's probably the most explaining I'll do. What's next? Kyurem Black. Kyurem Black will usually run loaded dice, which means it is weak to Intimidate. Which means Incineroar is your best friend for this. Yeah, so, like, Incineroar, just a faster dragon type that can hit it. It really doesn't like Koraidon, because it probably drops to a collision course. Like, even if you have Snow Up, it probably drops. The same can be said for Kyurem White. Kyurem White's least favorite matchup is Zacian, but it also really doesn't like Koraidon. Urshifu isn't too much of a problem for it, because it can run Freeze Dry, but it can't touch Zacian. Zacian just hits it with Behemoth Blade. It can't touch... it's outsped by Koraidon, took out with Collision Course. But if you want one that isn't a restricted... I'm gonna have to think about this. A counter to Kyurem that isn't a restricted. There is one, my mind's just blanking. Probably, like, Ogerpon Half Flame? Or something like that. Or just Urshifu Rapid Strike next to Tornadus, because it really doesn't like that. Because Kyurem White always wants Snow Up, but then, like, you just click Rain Dance, and then boom. Pray they don't get screens up. Yeah, Kyurem White's actually kind of hard to counter if you don't have the right restricted for it. Fortunately for me, I do. Next, I'm gonna be going over Solgaleo and Duskmane Necrozma. For both of them, it's Incineroar. Incineroar hits them for super effective. Necrozma isn't immune to Intimidate, so it is Intimidate weak if it's not running Clear Amulet. They can only hit it with Sunsteel Strike, whereas Incineroar is probably doing more to them with Flare Blitz. And that's honestly, that's really all you need. That's really all you need for that one. For Dawn Wings, it's kind of the same deal. Necrozma, Dawn Wings, and Lunala. These two do not like Incineroar, again. They also really don't like Calyrex Shadow Rider. Or, Terapagos. Terapagos is a really bad matchup for Lunala. For Lunala, unironically, Farigiraf as well. Because if you get Lunala to an endgame against Farigiraf, you can't like Lunala can't hit Farigiraf because it will run Moongeist Beam, which Farigiraf is immune to, and Meteor Beam, which takes 2 turns to charge. Meaning that Farigiraf could just protect every other turn, and Lunala is just kind of screwed. Terapagos, you just set up in front of Lunala. Calyrex, you force him to click Wide Guard, and in Duskmane Necrozma's case, Dawn Wings Necrozma's case, it can't really do anything because it doesn't get Wide Guard. So those two struggle with quite a bit. Next is going to be Zacian. This one's simple. Zacian hates Incineroar, which is why you will often see Zacian paired with Urshifu, because Zacian, unfortunately, isn't immune to Intimidate. Incineroar is everywhere. Chances are you're going to get Intimidate cycled, which is why Swords Dance is basically mandatory. Next is going to be Zamazenta. Zamazenta, there are 2 Pokemon Zamazenta hates, and that's Landorus, and that's Amoonguss. Landorus kind of just ignores the defense boosts, because it's a special attacker, it will ignore the physical defense boosts. And Amoonguss will resist Body Press, put it to sleep, and let the allies take care of it. So when you're running Zamazenta, you want ways to take care of those. Next is going to be Eternatus. This is a good one. Probably just Landorus again, because then you force them to Terra. You can get outbulked. Like, if they Terra, they can outbulk you. But then you force them to Terra, and then you can take advantage of that, depending on what Terra it is. Eternatus also really doesn't like Swords Dance Zacian, which is why there will often be a Foul Play Mon next to it, or a Mon like Screamtail with Encore to lock it into Swords Dance. So, we'll get into the last few now. Oh yeah, Eternatus, it hates Groudon, I just remembered. It doesn't like Groudon, which is why Wo-Chien is really good for it. But next, we'll get into the last few now. So next up is Calyrex Shadow Rider. This thing's worst matchup is going to be Terapagos. It can't touch it with Astral Barrage, which is the biggest thing. Terapagos just sets up in front of it, and then not much can be done. But then there's also Incineroar. It can't really touch Incineroar. Incineroar flonks it with Knockoff. It gets parting shotted. Again, not much can be done. Next is going to be Ice Rider. Yeah, Calyrex Ice Rider. It mainly hates... what is it? It mainly hates Kyogre and Zamazenta. You can't touch Kyogre with... You can't really touch Kyogre that much with Glacial Lance. And then, unless you're running like Terra Water or Terra Grass, you take way too much from Water Spout. And then for Zamazenta, you just outbulk it. You just set up in front of it. It resists Glacial Lance. You get up a Body Press. You get up an Iron Defense. You Body Press the Calyrex. GG. But if you don't want restricteds, then what's a good one for Calyrex? I'm trying to think. It probably doesn't like Incineroar too much, which is why it kind of has to run high horsepower, which you can then play around. because you can click knock off and then start intimidate cycling it. Oh wait, Amoonguss, because if you run 27 speed IVs on your Amoonguss, you underspeed Calyrex Ice Rider, meaning you can put it to sleep before it can spore you in Trick Room. You put it to sleep before it can do anything inside of Trick Room. Next it'll be Groudon. It's a simple answer. This one's Flutter Man. You force Groudon to Terra, and then you get chunked by Shadow Ball if it's Choice Specs. That one's pretty simple. Flutter Man's also his best friend, which is really funny. Yeah, that one's simple enough. I don't need to go into too much detail on that. Groudon also doesn't like Lunala that much, because I'm running Flame Charge, and Lunala doesn't take too much from Flame Charge. If you're running Flare Blitz, you're probably fine. It's just something to note. It's going to be Miraidon. Simple answer. Rillaboom. Miraidon's one of the reasons why Rillaboom is so good. Because not only do you resist Electro Drift, you can safely switch in on Miraidon. Then terrain is replaced, so it's not Miraidon and its allies aren't helping that much. That one's just simple enough. It also really doesn't like Groudon. Groudon does drop the Draco Meteor, so you're gonna, if it's Choice Specs, Groudon does drop the Draco Meteor. So you either run like a really specially defensive Groudon, or just have something to help deal with Miraidon. And lastly is Terapagos. Now, the restricted one is Zamazenta. Zamazenta thwonks it with Body Press. Terapagos can't do it. Its best option for Zamazenta's Earth Power, which that's like the most common one. You know, Terra Starstorm, Earth Power, Calm Mind, Protect. But you do get outsped by Zamazenta and get chunked by Body Press, which can be really annoying. And then the last one's Mienshao. You can't be intimidated, so close combat is gonna chunk. It doesn't like Fake Out, and the access to Wide Guard is really annoying. So yeah, that's really it for now. Those are just the best, probably the best counters to each of the restricted. If I missed one, or if you have any different opinions, put it in the comments. So thanks for watching. Bye.